Okay, so because a lot of you have been asking about um, applying epoxy to wine glasses, I'm gonna try to do this tutorial for you guys. I'm not very good at videos. I don't make them typically, so I'm gonna do my best. Um, I don't normally use tape, um, so I'm gonna show you how I do one without tape, and then I'm gonna show you how I do one with the tape. For those of you who are really nervous and want your lines to be crisp. This is just using electric tape, black electric tape. I use the Amazing Clearcast, side A, side B. It's a two-part, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, so you mix the two together until they have combined completely. So that's what I have here. I have my side A and then I have my side B. I don't know if there's a huge difference in which one you mix first. I have watched some YouTube tutorials before I started, and they say to work with the B first and add the A into the B. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna show you how I mix it because I don't have like a tripod, so I don't want to get epoxy on my phone. But I'll show you what it looks like after I have combined them. All right, so now that they're combined, you can see that it's kind of like milky. That's all the tiny bubbles that's in the epoxy that I've created by my mixing. If you mix slow, your bubbles won't be so much. I mixed fast and then I let it sit for 3 minutes to let some of the bubbles pop. You might be able to see that happening here. But some of the bubbles will pop. If they don't, that's fine. I'm going to use a heat gun to pop the bubbles that are going to form on my cup. I did go ahead and spray these down with 1 coat of the Krylon triple thick clear glaze, just to make sure that my glitter doesn't move while I'm applying the epoxy. So I don't want like the glitter coming off the cup. I want to keep what's on the cup there. So this has been sitting for a couple minutes now. These both turn. This one is a Spin-It. I got this one on clearance recently. It spins only one direction. This one I bought from Hobby Lobby, I believe. And it spins in either direction, and it comes with like the foam insert to hold your cup in place. So if you turn it off and then turn it back on, usually it goes in the other direction. So that helps with like, depending if you're a lefty or a righty, or however it's easy for you to use it. Okay, so I'm going to try to apply the epoxy one-handed so I can hold my phone. I'm gonna turn it off for 1 second. Okay. So I just put usually like a little bit at a time, and like rub it in, and then I'll work around the cup until I have rubbed it in completely around the cup. We do have our line, so I'm not too worried about going up too far. You do want to make sure that if you're taping it, you tape it above the line that you created with your glitter, because you want your epoxy to come over that a little bit. And that's just to make sure that you're not going to get any water underneath when you're washing your cup. You don't want any water to go underneath and get into the glitter. I hear that creates mold, and nobody wants that. So I'm going to work all the way around my cup, and then I will come back to showing you how to put your epoxy so that it creates a straight line. Okay, so I've got epoxy on both the cups, but I didn't, if you see here, I didn't make sure that I created my line. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take like my stick, put a little bit of epoxy on it, and then kind of just run it along the edge of the glass. And this is why like I don't usually use tape, because when I do this, I'm usually able to just make my own straight line and it works pretty well. So if you'll notice, it's like extra drippy. I'm gonna go then and take just to the edge of my cup and let it run along off my finger, right off the edge of the glitter. And I'm gonna do that as it's turning so I can create my straight edge. And I'll just continue to do that until I see no more like uneven spots. It should be straight all the way around. Now your epoxy, I mean, it won't keep running up the cup unless you take the cup off your turner and set it upside down. Then it'll run down the cup. But it should stay in this straight line that you create once you are done. And that's just because it's turning, and so it's keeping it in place. So once I have my straight edges, I will run my finger down the end of the glass. And you'll know, usually you'll have to do 2 coats. So the first coat will feel a little rough after it dries. Then you just take a little bit of sandpaper, rub out the bumps, not too much because you don't want to get past the epoxy, and then into the glitter. You just want to do enough. So I'm gonna attempt to take this tape off. I really don't like working with the tape because the epoxy is so sticky. I just feel like that makes it harder to create your straight line. And of course my tape is the other direction, so hold on. Alright, so I had to set my phone down to get the tape off because I had it running the opposite direction of the way it's turning, so it was a little difficult. But I ended up getting a little bit of epoxy on the cup when I was taking the tape off. Let's see if we can see it. Like over here somewhere, which is fine. I'll just take some acetone, there it is, some acetone to it and wipe it off later. But I mean, my edges are, they're not bad. And I'm gonna do a second coat, so I can always sand it down a little bit and then work on that. So now we're gonna go to this one where I don't use the tape. It's a little bit easier for me this way. I'm gonna try not to mess this up one-handed here. But I do the same thing. I grab a little bit of epoxy, run it along the edge with my spatula, stick, whatever it is you're using. That all the way around, just to make sure I have enough on the edge so that I can run my finger. And you'll see the parts that are kind of dull don't have epoxy on them. Parts that are shiny do. So I'm just trying to get all the dull spots covered in epoxy. It just makes it easier. And it is like super sticky, so you want to really be careful not to have any of it going where you don't want it to go. So I'm working from behind the glass to keep all the epoxy on this side, and I can kind of control where it's going more. Alright, now I can continue to use my stick and do like this and make my straight lines. Or I can use my finger, whichever you feel like you're going to be able to control your line easier with. Would be your best option. I do want to make sure it goes over. So this is when I take my finger and I kind of just run the epoxy up over the edge, and I'm going to work it up little by little as I go. So right now I'm just starting with a little bit coming up over the edge, and then I'll move my finger once I reach my starting point again. I'll move it up a little higher to make it a little bit bigger at the top. Now, if you ended up not having like a super straight line, I have been able to go over with my X-Acto knife once it dries and kind of trimming my edge out. So I need to bring this side up a little bit more. And this is kind of difficult because I'm working one-handed here from like a strange angle. I can't really see too well what I'm doing. My turner's super loud. Now my line is pretty straight actually. So then I bring it back from the edge a little, being careful not to push it up further. And running it along the end like this, just to make sure my bottom is coated. And once I got all my edges evened out, I'm gonna take my heat gun because you can see there's bubbles. So I'm gonna take my heat gun to the glass. I'm gonna start with the one that's been turning the longest. You don't want to just set it in one spot, run it back and forth until you don't see any more bubbles. And you see my line that we created is not moving. It's not sliding up more. It's going to stay and it's going to turn and it's going to dry like that. You can see where the bubbles are. Just going to make sure that isn't turning. Especially along the bottom here. The bottom edge likes to collect a lot of the bubbles. Once you don't see any more bubbles, especially around the edge where you can, it's supposed to be clear, then you are good. Just leave it. So now we're going to do this one. Lots of bubbles here. You can see it's getting clear. These bubbles are starting to disappear. You don't want to do too much because you don't want to burn the epoxy. But you can see it's clear now. Just want to make sure the bottom is good. Alright, and then we'll be back in like 6 hours. These are going to turn for 6 hours before I touch them at all. And then I won't touch the actual epoxied part. I'll just touch the top of the glass to remove them. And then I set them upside down like these are. Set them upside down so that they can fully cure. I don't want to get any fingerprints or anything on them until they're completely cured. Like, they're not sticky anymore, but you might get fingerprints on them. I let them sit for 24 hours and then I do my second coat.